G'day boys, welcome to Stem34, which is a very exciting time for us because this stem actually represents the start of option 4, which is called improving performance. So you'll need to put a title page in your books, paste in the syllabus, sit back and relax and get on with your notes here. We're doing strength training in this particular stem, which is Stem34. And if we just have a look here at strength training, there are 3 areas that we're going to look at: resistance training, weight training and isometric training. Before we get into the specifics, let's just have a bit of a general look at strength training and some of the basic principles. We're looking here, you can see the terminology: repetition, tempo, which is speed of the lifting, sets, how much force is applied, and different types of exercise. And strength training is undertaken using the 3 basic types of muscular contraction: isotonic, isometric and isokinetic. And here we have the 3 definitions, 2 on this page, and isokinetic is over the page on this slide. So just having a look here, isotonic generally is what the sort of muscular contraction where the muscle gets longer and gets shorter during the contractions, like when you're doing free weights. So there's movement involved at the joint, as opposed to the isometric, where there is force applied by the muscles but there's actually no movement. So it's a completely still form of training. And isokinetic is where there is movement but there's a fixed resistance throughout the entire movement, and we actually look at that when we talk about hydraulic training. So we'll get more into that a bit later on. Looking at classifications here, you've got max strength, elastic strength, and strength endurance. So basically, the first one, max strength, is how strong are you? How much weight can you possibly lift? This elastic strength, so your power, is a combination of strength and speed. So it's not only how strong are you, but how quickly can your muscles contract. And strength endurance is, obviously, as endurance suggests, how many times can you lift something over and over and over. The first area we're looking at here is called resistance training. It has 2 examples using elastics and hydraulics. So we'll look at these elastic resistance bands first. And these are the rubbery type bands that you might see in various gyms. They're very good for rehabilitation. They're also very good for isolating smaller muscle groups that wouldn't get used as much during general weight training. So they're relatively cheap. You just need to attach them to something, and you can mirror sporting movements that you probably can't do with weight machines or barbells and things like that. So, for example, you can mirror a throwing action by securing the rubber band or the resistance band to a pole behind you and hold onto it and mirror a throwing type action, which is going to give you some sort of resistance. You might have noticed that the resistance bands come in different colours. And that relates to how hard the resistance is. So generally this is the pattern followed, with yellow being the lightest, silver being the heaviest. And when we say lightest and heaviest, lightest resistance and heaviest resistance. The other form of resistance training is hydraulic resistance, which is using machines, usually with gas type cylinders, where you can adjust the actual resistance. And the interesting thing about these machines is they will not move unless the person moves them themselves. So, for example, if you're talking free weights, when you lift a barbell up, say you're doing bench press, that's going to, if you don't hold it up, it's going to drop down on you because of gravity. With the isokinetic hydraulic resistance machines, they don't move unless you move. So it's a concept where you push one way and pull back in the other. So if we're doing bench press, for example, we'd be pushing the bar up, but we could then take our hands off it and it would just stay where it is. It wouldn't come back down until we pulled it back down. So the advantage here is that it uses both muscle groups. So the agonist then becomes the antagonist and vice versa. Here's a couple of examples of hydraulic resistance machines. You can see here this bloke on the top left, he would be mimicking a running type action, moving his legs up and down. The resistance is coming from here. See these yellow things? That's the cylinders that we were talking about. So you can adjust how hard that resistance is going to be. So you can see here, by doing that movement, he'll be using his quads and his hamstrings alternately with each leg. Another machine here is the bicep curl. So the person would sit here with their arms over this part, hold on to the 2 handles here, and move it up and down. You can see here that's the gas cylinder, or the cylinder, hydraulic cylinder, sorry, and that's the adjuster. You can adjust how much pressure you want on there. Next type of strength training is the most common type, involves weight training, which involves isotonic muscular contractions, in which case, as I mentioned earlier, the muscle actually gets longer and shorter, and the terminology for that is eccentric and concentric contractions. So we talk about using free weights, plates, dumbbells, pulleys, weight machines, and sometimes also the person's own body weight. The downside to this is that the tension is not the same all the way through the exercise. There's the most tension at the start of the exercise, but once you've actually started moving, because of the inertia, the upper parts of the muscle aren't getting as much of a workout as the lower parts. So it's not an even workout on the muscles, which is something that isokinetic training has an advantage over this area in. Now this table, you need to copy this into your books, just represents what an athlete would need to follow if you wanted to achieve certain things. So if you want to achieve strength endurance, that's how heavy he needs to make it. So that's how heavy in terms of numbers. RM is repetition max. That's how many repetitions you'd be doing and how many sets. So you can see there, a lot of repetitions, a lot of sets, and so on. You can read through these, and we'll discuss those more in class. Just some dangers. If sometimes people want to lift weights that are too heavy, so then they sacrifice their technique, and as a result of that, they use other muscles that probably aren't meant to be used for that exercise. They may not be as strong, they may not be able to cope with the extra load. And the example given here is the squat. A lot of people cheat by using their back muscles, and that leads to lower back problems. So it's very important that with these free weights, proper technique is followed so that we can minimise the chance of injuries. Here's just some examples of exercises to work out various muscle groups of the body. You'll need to copy this in. You don't need to copy every single exercise, but just make sure you've got, apart from the hamstring curl down here and the calf raises, just make sure you have 2 exercises for each muscle group. Okay, and that'll just give you an idea of what needs to be done. Now, these are some overload techniques. And these are used in order to, as it suggests, overload the muscle so they can maximise their strength gains. This is not an exhaustive list. There's quite a number of different techniques, but we've just picked out 5 here that you'll need to make note of in your books. The last area here with strength training is isometric training, which is where there's a static contraction of the muscles, so therefore no movement of the muscles at all. It's very good to isolate a particular muscle group in a particular area, and it's a very tough or very difficult thing to do, isometric training, but the advantages are that it doesn't require any equipment. It can be done at home, and there, believe it or not, there is actual increases in muscle mass and strength as a result of this. And just here, just continuing on, here's some examples of what the principles behind isometric contractions. So you can see there, ideally 5 to 10 seconds to get the best strength development. Sometimes exercises are held for 3 minutes or longer. And these are ones where they're exercising more than one muscle group. And you can see here over the page, this is an example of an isometric exercise. This lady holding that particular pose for she's holding 10 to 30 seconds, or until the body can no longer maintain a flat bridge, and that being here. So what that's saying is only hold it for that long, because if you don't, if you start to cheat and go into bad technique, then you can potentially cause injury. So that is strength training. Thanks, boys.